Welcome to a four-part series to give you an introduction to both Lean and Six Sigma. If you have registered for our Lean Six Sigma White Belt certification course, you will receive a Lean Six Sigma White Belt certificate once you complete all four modules and pass a final exam. You will see a link to the registration at the end of this course. My name is Kevin Clay, and I will be your program leader for today. Let's get started. Let's briefly go over the course agenda for this module. I'll start out with an introduction to both myself, Kevin Clay, and our firm, Six Sigma Development Solutions Incorporated. In this module, we will be discussing a very important topic. That topic is building the house of Lean and Six Sigma. We will talk about how to create an environment or infrastructure for both Lean and Six Sigma to survive. Next, we will cover two core concepts of the Lean methodology. These concepts are flow and tact, as well as pull and Kanban. As we learn about these two concepts, I want you to compare them to processes that you are currently engaged. You might be surprised to find out that your current processes are far from Lean. Let's move on. A question you might be asking yourself is, who is this gentleman instructing us? What are his credentials? Well, excellent question. My name is Kevin Clay, and I am the president of Six Sigma Development Solutions. I am a Six Sigma Master Black Belt and a Lean Master Practitioner. I use the word master lightly because I truly do not think there is one. I find that the more you know, the more there is to know. It is a never-ending learning process. On this slide, you might see my email as well as my personal mobile number. If you have any questions about any of the topics that we cover in this course, please do not hesitate to email, text, or call me. Myself and my colleagues pride ourselves as mentors and teachers that are available to answer your questions. I have had the benefit of being a Lean and Six Sigma practitioner for over 17 years. In these 17 years, I have gained operational experience in many different disciplines. Disciplines such as manufacturing, distribution, processing, finance, retail sales, insurance, healthcare, IT, nonprofits, local and state governments, and many national governments. Myself and my colleagues have experienced many different processes and cultures. This makes us very effective teachers, mentors, and consultants. I have personally instructed over 500 plus change agents across the many disciplines that we have just discussed. I've led over 15 implementations in both domestic and global organizations. I have led or mentored over 80 Six Sigma industrial and transactional projects, and facilitated over 110 Kaizen and workout projects for industrial, service, and healthcare environments. How do these credentials benefit you as a student? When my colleagues and I teach the Lean and Six Sigma methodologies, we back up these concepts with real-world stories of how these tools actually work. Comments on our course evaluations follow a consistent theme. These comments basically are, it's like you've been in my facility and you know my organization's problems. Well, we may not have been in your facility, but we have seen many processes with the same issues. Building the house of Lean, starting with the foundation. This is really one of the most important slides in this whole presentation. I'm sure all of you understand how a house is built. Some of you may have actually been built a house. But one of the first things that you have to have when you build a house, first thing you have to have is a plan. All right, make sure that it doesn't make sense to build a house to build the structure without understanding what you're going to do first. And a lean and or Six Sigma implementation is no different. You have to truly have a plan first. You can't just go out there and train some green belts, train white belts, train lead agents, and expect them to come back to your organization and change the world. It's not going to happen. And I have people in my open enrollment classes weekly that are told by their organization to go learn Lean and Six Sigma and come in and fix all of our problems. And I tell them, just like I'm going to tell you, that that's not going to happen. You're going to be set up for failure. So for companies that really want to put Lean and or Six Sigma in place to be kind of their methodology for continuously improving what they do, and hopefully every company wants to do that, it's got to be put in a certain way. All right, it's like building a house. And once we have a plan, and we have to have a very well thought out plan, a very well vetted plan. But once we have that plan, then we start out with the first structure. And the first structure, in putting down any house, any building, is a good foundation. Now, I have companies call me up on a weekly basis, send me emails, send my colleagues emails, and ask for, again, can you come train some green belts? Can you come train some lean agents and have them? And once they get trained, they are expected to come back and literally save the world. And I always answer these people that call me, these companies that call me, in the same way. What kind of infrastructure do you have for those change agents to survive? And most of the time I get, well, I'm not really sure what that means, infrastructure. And we'll talk about what that infrastructure is. It's part of that foundation. But they answer me, basically we don't have an infrastructure. And I always answer back the same thing, that you will not build a sustainable Lean and or Six Sigma culture at your company without that infrastructure. What will happen is we'll train these change agents, and they'll become very knowledgeable. They'll become a more contributing member of your organization, but they will come back to your organization and they will try to make change. They will step in somebody's sandbox, and they'll get punched in the eye. And that's kind of a derogatory statement, but that's almost exactly what happens. And you get punched in the eye enough times by going into somebody else's department in a cross-functional project, and that person who doesn't understand Lean or Six Sigma looks at you and says, "Get out of my area." And there's no backing or infrastructure to support that person or that team. That project will die. And eventually Lean and or Six Sigma will die as well in that organization. So in order to truly have this sustaining these methodologies, in order to have them sustain, we have to build this house. So the first part of the house, again, the foundation. So the foundation, what makes up the foundation? All right. Let's talk about that. The foundation. The foundation is really people understanding what their responsibilities are in this implementation. All right. The first team that has to understand truly what their role is for Lean and or Six Sigma is your executives. The executives have to play a role. There has to be that top-down buy-in. Again, I can't just train a bunch of green belts, lean agents, to then come back and make change in my organization. What if my executives don't really understand what this is? Well, that could be very detrimental to green belts. And I'll kind of put green belt into the same word as lean agent. We really call them the same thing. So that green belts might get into situations where they might get in some political trouble. Again, because that infrastructure hasn't been built. So at the very top level of your organization, they have to understand what this is and what their role in this is. All right, and we won't talk a lot about the role, but part of that role is to identify what are those key metrics that we're trying to affect in this new or in this lean and or Six Sigma implementation. All right, they also really got to help us to understand how do we market this, because I will tell you that any implementation of any methodology, if not marketed well, will fail. So we've got the executive level, and the executive level really has truly no more responsibilities than they already have. It just kind of alters their responsibilities, because their responsibility is the visionary role of the company. Their responsibility is to make sure that we hit these high level metrics that we're affecting the metrics of success for the company. The second part of this foundation is something called champions. The champions are business unit leaders, departmental leaders. These are the people with the political clout in an organization to be what we call the bulldozers. All right, their job is to get in front of those change agents and make sure that those change agents don't get punched in the eye. Make sure that those change agents, it's not the change agent's job to get in political battles. It's the change agent's job to make change, to add money back to the bottom line, to add value back to the bottom line. So those champions are there to make sure that people do not get in their way. All right. So that's why they have to have that political clout to do that. We call them the bulldozers. There is a very defined set of training for the champions. Champions also have to be able to understand how to pick projects within their department, in their business unit. All right, their job is to help pick those projects. They do that along with the belts, black belts, etc. Help to understand and pick and prioritize those projects, and then give those projects, disseminate those projects to the change agents. So that's also their job. Their job, another job, is for them to be the cheerleader of Six Sigma and Lean. Nobody is going to follow a methodology unless their leader does. Again, it's that practice what you preach saying. So we've talked about the executives. We talked about the champions. All right, and those can be one and the same. You don't necessarily have to have executives and then champions. They could actually be the same people. It depends on the size of your organization. The next step in the process, or the next step in the foundation, is what's called a white belt. All right, and that's what you're being trained as today, the white belt. Now, let me make it perfectly clear, and I hope this is heard by everybody. As a white belt, your job is not to make change, not to go out and to take on Six Sigma and Lean projects. Your job as a white belt is to understand at a very high level what these two methodologies are. You're not trained to make change within this Lean and Six Sigma methodology, right? You can make change. That's going to come later. We're going to talk about this. Small continuous changes, but you are not trained as a Lean agent nor a Six Sigma green belt to be able to make these high level changes, these breakthrough changes. All right, small continuous changes, small continuous reduction of waste can be made by you, but there has to be a formal process to where you identify that waste, and then it gets vetted and prioritized before you make that change. All right. So again, very important. A white belt. A white belt is not a change agent. You're not that green belt. You're not that Lean agent. So if you got into this class to go out and make change to save the world, I will tell you, number one, a disclaimer, it's not what this course is about. Number two, you will do so with much detriment to your company. So, white belt. So I'm sorry I had to make that disclaimer, but that has been a problem in the past. The white belt is everybody in the organization. Every single person in the organization or within the scope of the implementation should understand what Lean and or Six Sigma are. All right, everybody should understand what the strategic direction of the organization is. If we don't have this understanding, then you'll have change agents come in and invite you into these Six Sigma projects, Lean projects, to help collaborate with them, and you'll be innately afraid. Most people, when they think of Lean, they think of, well, am I going to, by adding my information to this project, I might get fired. I might, be one of the FTEs that get reduced. All right. The whole point of the white belt is to get rid of that fear, because truly in a Lean and or Six Sigma organization, if you do this correctly, your job won't go away. There will be more jobs created. So the white belt, a very important part of this. The white belt is what we call the PhD of the process. All of you own a process. All of you are part of a process. All right. All of you know your process and know it very well. And as change agents, those green belts and those Lean agents, black belts, etc., have to understand that you are the most important person in the room when it comes to improving the process. Guess what? You own the process. And we'll talk about why that's really, really important. So once the white belts are trained, now it's time to train the change agents. Those change agents are Lean agents and green belts. And both of those Lean agents and green belts are the same person. All right? The same person gets trained both Lean and Six Sigma so that they understand the concept of Lean and how to streamline a process, and the concept of Six Sigma and how to optimize the process. Two very powerful methodologies. Two very, very powerful methodologies. All right. So once we have these change agents trained, all right. Once we have these change agents trained, now we can start doing two things, and these two things are the pillars: systematically eliminating waste and systematically problem solving. All right. Systematically eliminating waste is the responsibility of everybody in the organization. Everybody should be able to reduce waste. Everybody should be able to reduce waste. All right. And again, we don't just roguely send you out there and tell you to go make change. There's a formality to this. Again, part of that house of Lean is that formal structure. So I'll give you an example. I'm Johnny. I go out and I see that I have to walk 30 feet to grab something, to bring it over to my workstation to do work. And I have to do that 40 times a day. And by understanding waste, all of a sudden I go, why am I doing this? All the time that I'm spending walking back and forth, guess what I'm not doing? I'm not adding value. I'm not making that product. I'm not creating that service, that transaction. So I then identify that waste. I then identify that on some solution, like, let's say, for example, I've got a link in a SharePoint system. All right, a link on my computer that I click on it, and it opens up the screen that says identify waste, or identify inefficiencies or problem. All right, I write in what I see as the inefficiency, and then I might put a countermeasure, which is basically how would you propose to solve that? I write that in there. Write down my information, contact information. I hit submit, and it goes into a database. All right, that database, in that database, once a week, committee meets to vet those, to look at those and say, okay, which ones become projects, which ones do not, because that person might not really understand truly what's happening with that process as a holistic view. And then those get turned into projects. Those get advertised back out to those people that inserted the project, submitted the projects, and then it could be assigned back to that person who actually identified the waste. So now that person can be part of the team to eliminate that waste. But without that infrastructure, what will happen is that person might see that problem and then take it upon himself to fix it. But by fixing it, he might have fixed it in his process, but 10 other processes now might be detrimented by the change that he's made. Again, without that formal infrastructure put in place, those things happen, and I can guarantee they've happened in your organization. So, systematic waste elimination is the responsibility of every single person in the organization. Systematic problem solving is the responsibility of those change agents, the green belts, the change agents, lean agents. Okay, but those change agents can't do anything without the help of the white belts. We have to. The change agents can't make the change. The change agents don't know the process. You know the process. The white belts know the process. They're the process owners. They're the most important people in the room. I call them the PhDs of the process. And those change agents can't do anything without you. So good change agents say to their white belts that we're here to collaborate with you. We're here to guide us on a journey to solving this problem. But it takes your knowledge, your experience, your expertise to get us there. So systematic waste elimination, problem solving, once that foundation has been built, and then that leads to building of the roof. And the roof is culture. All right. As I continuously systematically eliminate waste, as I continuously systematically problem solve, over time this becomes the way we do business. And it's an amazing transformation as this happens. Lastly, this all surrounds a learning organization. Now, in most organizations are not learning organizations. What they are organizations where if somebody does something wrong, they get in trouble. I will tell you that and most people kind of cross their arms and scowl at this, but 99.9% of the time, when a defect is made, when something happens in the process, and something bad happens, it is not the fault of the employee. It is the fault of the manager. because we didn't make a process to where, we didn't create a process to where the mistake can't be made. A good manager will always think that way. That not how did Johnny screw up, but what did I not do in this process? What did I not do in this process to create a process to where Johnny can't do that? And that helps me to say, okay, the mistake that Johnny made was a mistake in the process. How do we take that mistake out of it over time as Johnny makes mistakes? Which mistakes are opportunities. They're opportunities for us to learn about the process. As we learn about the process and start to take mistakes out of the process becomes better. That is what is called a learning organization. Most of us, again, exist in an organization where we know the same thing every time. All right? Because, again, we place blame. So, all of this is called the house of Lean and Six Sigma. If built correctly, your organization will take will create a huge transformation in the way it does things. So again, we get into flow. All right. So we talked about it briefly, but now let's kind of get into it. Now we're not gonna really go deeply into understanding or describing this, but I'm gonna do it really from a high level. Flow is the smooth, non-chaotic, or simple movement of items or people that are processed from the start to the end of the process. Most companies, the links of the chain are broken. What I mean by links of the chain is, I've got 10 links, and they're all different departments that are all involved in creating a product or a service or a transaction. In my first department, my first link, that's the first step. And then my second department, my second link, that's the second step, and on and on. They're all broken links of the chain. They all exist separately as silos. All right? And as those links get farther and farther apart, more and more waste builds up between them, more and more complexity, more and more chaos. And that first video that I showed you, a lot of people, again, when I ask what the improvement should be, they say, well, let's automate it. But really, all you're doing when you automate a complex process with broken links of the chain is, instead of having physical waste in between the links of the chain, you now have digital waste. Same thing's going on. And again, I know all of you have most likely been part of some kind of a software implementation that would, quote, streamline the process. And then a year later, it still hasn't done it. Guess what? This is why. Because it goes back to that quote, you can't solve problems with the same thinking that got you into them. All right. So by automating the process, you're solving the problem with the same education and knowledge that got you into the problem in the first place. And again, that other quote that says insanity. What's the definition of insanity? To do the same thing over and over again, but expect different results. It's not going to happen. So in Lean, our job is really to start removing post-it notes from the wall, removing complexity, and move those links closer and closer together with the optimal environment of connecting those links. Again, talking about connecting links, but if you have this process, the first data process, we had 12 different departments all broken up. The improved process was we actually connected links to the chain, but they were all connected. They're connected within one person. So now the links are that one person are all the links. So therefore, there's no space in between those links. They're all connected, and the transformation in that process was amazing. The criteria for process flow is one work unit processed at each step. All right, not in batches, with 0 work in progress between processes, and produce 100% at the pull of the customer. At the pull of the customer. And this is called takt time. Again, takt time is that heartbeat of the process, that very level, balanced flow of the process. Not a lot of variation. Not real fast 1 minute and real slow the second minute. Not all over the place, but a very balanced flow. I will tell you that 0 work in progress between processes is actually not efficient. All right, this is what's called perfect flow. 0 work in progress between processes, but there will never be a process that is perfect. There will always be things that go wrong. All right, always be things that go wrong. Now that's where Six Sigma comes in to say, how do we reduce those things that go wrong? How do we produce a more consistent process with less defects? And in that case, it flows better. But there will always be problems. There will always be issues. There will always be downtime. So it is actually more beneficial to have a very managed amount of inventory between process. A very managed amount of inventory. Now, that kind of goes against lean. Well, not really, because if you were to do 0 work in progress between processes, it would be counterproductive. So lean uses a concept called pull. Lean uses a concept called pull to mitigate that. All right. So again, flow is moving those links closer together, trying to connect the links. You won't connect all the links. All right. That in most cases, especially in the service process, things like banking, even healthcare, you can't connect all the links. It's impossible. So moving the link as close to another link as possible, and then in between those links is going to be something called a pull process, a replenishment pull process. So, a pull process. A pull process is kind of goes against the way we do things. We usually do things in what's called a push process. We tend to push our product into the system, to push our transactions into the system, without really understanding the rate at which they exit. So, if I push 2 transactions every 10 minutes into the system, but 1 transaction comes out every 10 minutes, then what have I done? Well, I've created a bottleneck. I've created chaos in the system. I've created inventory. So we tend to, in business, most of us tend to exist this way in what's called a push process. One way to really understand that you have a push process is to say, can step 1 be faster than step 2? And is it promoted that they're faster? So if step 1 can produce at a faster rate than step 2, and they're allowed to produce at that rate, then that right there tells you have a push process. Usually, in companies that have silos, every silo really exists to the beat of their own drum. So a preceding step, the beat could be a lot faster than the next step. That's a push process. So let's kind of look at this another way. So if I had 6 feet of rope, all right, and it was laid out in front of me, in a straight line, and I'm kind of on one side of the rope, all right. I'm facing the rope and I'm holding the end of the rope. So if I push that rope, all right, that rope is eventually going to bind up, right? Well, that's what we kind of do, is we kind of push the rope. We let the rope bind up because we don't really understand what's happening with the end of the rope. We don't know how fast the ends the rope's moving. It might not be moving at all, but we're pushing chaos into the system. Now, let's take another example. Let's take pulling the rope. All right, so I have got the rope 6 feet behind me. I've got it attached to my hip. I'm facing away from the rope. The rope is 6 feet behind me, and I start walking, pulling the rope behind me. Okay, how fast is the end of the rope going to move? It's going to move as fast as the end that's attached to my hip. All parts of the rope are going to move at the same speed. This is what pull is. All right. This is pull is governed by the customer, and this is called replenishment pull. As the customer pulls or consumes. Remember, a method of controlling flow of resources by placing only what has been consumed. As the customer pulls or consumes the product, I therefore replace what has been consumed. I don't produce product based on a forecast. I don't have this crystal ball, but I let the customer delegate my product, my process. So most companies kind of just build a lot of inventory information, transactions, widgets, whatever. In a pull process, we have to have inventory, but it has to be a managed amount of inventory. So let's say a pull process. I've got a customer that demands 100 widgets a day. All right. And it takes 7 days for me to be able to replenish a widget. My production cycle is 7 days. Okay, so if their demand is 100 per day, and it takes me 7 days to replenish it, then I'm going to have 700 on hand in order to meet the customer demand. So that last day, when they pull that last widget, I should then replenish 700 widgets. Right now, we all know that any process is not perfect. There's going to be chaos that happens in it. So we have this thing also called safety stock, which allows for the variation in the process and the variation in the demand of the customer. All right. So if my process has a lot of problems with it, and it can't consistently give me a 700 at a time, then I increase that production to 900, even though the customer demand is 700. I have a little bit overage there. All right, I don't set that overage and forget it. I set that overage only to supplement for the variation, for the waste in the process. But following Kaizen, following continuous improvement, I want to drill down that variation. I want to drill down that waste to eventually what I have in production exactly equals what that customer demand is, and so therefore I have something called just in time to make sure that I only have just the amount of finished goods, just the amount of raw material in my process to just meet customer demand and no more. Again, a push system is really resources that are provided to the consumer based on forecasts and schedules. So again, I've got that crystal ball, and I build so that on the day that customer wants it, the day that I predicted that demand, we can meet that demand. Again, these forecasts and schedules, usually you forecast or schedule a lot more. And think about it. If during that production cycle, let's say it's a 7-day production cycle, if during that production cycle things change, then all of a sudden I'm left with all of that stuff. Here's another good signal, Kanban signal. We actually see this every day in our lives. So a lot of different Kanban signals we deal with. This is one of them. The gas tank. So actually in your car, when it gets down to a quarter of a tank, that's actually a signal that says it's time to get some more fuel. You actually have that quarter plus, all the way to the red lights. And beyond to find a gas station and get more gas. Some people might know that the lower you let your fuel get, the more impurities that you get out of your tank and it goes into your fuel line. So this allows you not to get down to kind of that crud that's on the bottom of your tank to get pulled into your fuel system.
Benjamin Franklin once said, "The only thing more expensive than education is ignorance." I engage companies every day that have finally come to this realization. This is the point in which these companies start to transform. By completing this module, you have taken a step towards transforming your future and your success. If you have questions or comments about this module or any of the contents, please post them to Twitter or Facebook with the hashtag SSDSI, or you can also call, text, or email me directly. For those of you who are pursuing your Lean Six Sigma White Belt certification, let's go over the requirements. To become formally certified as a Lean Six Sigma White Belt, you must complete all 4 of the Lean Six Sigma White Belt modules. You will also be required to complete a final exam. This exam will be comprised of 20 questions with a passing grade of 75%, or 15 out of 20 questions correctly answered. You will have 40 minutes to complete the exam. Once you pass the exam, you will immediately get access to a formal Lean Six Sigma White Belt certificate. To register for the exam and the immediate issuing of the Lean Six Sigma White Belt certification, upon successfully passing the exam, please browse out to the link provided in the slide. If you're accessing this course through YouTube, then the link to register for the course is in the notes below. You can click any icon that resembles a lowercase I that is inside of a white circle in the upper right hand side of this video. This icon is also a link to the registration page. If you're accessing this video through YouTube, please like this video by clicking on the thumbs up and leave us a comment. Thank you for attending our course, and we hope you will continue with our other informative courses.